Hey, I get it, you're standing in the hobby shop or scrolling late at night, wondering if a 90X Trinocular stereo microscope is really worth the price tag, especially when you've already seen a few cheap models that promised the world and fell flat. I was in the same spot last month, trying to decide whether to upgrade from my old single-head microscope for my weekend electronics repairs and small-scale biology projects. I didn't want to waste money on a piece of glass that would just sit on a shelf, but I also didn't want to end up with something that would hold me back when the work got a little more detailed. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of work that makes a 90X zoom useful. If you're someone who spends evenings soldering tiny surface mount components, dissecting insects, or even doing low magnification PCB inspection for hobbyist prototyping, the extra zoom range can actually change how comfortably you see the details. The AmScope SM4TZ 144A 10M gives you a super wide field zoom from 3.5x up to 90x without having to switch eyepieces. That means you can start with a broad view to locate a component, then smoothly tighten in on a single solder joint without losing the context of where it sits on the board. In my own test, the transition was fluid enough that I didn't have to constantly refocus the camera. The optics kept the image sharp across the whole range. The 4-zone LED ring light is another piece that shows up when you actually use the microscope on real specimens. It's not just a single strip of LEDs, the ring is split into 4 sections, each with its own dimmer control. What that translates to in practice is being able to tilt the lighting to bring out texture on a leaf or highlight the solder mask on a board without creating harsh shadows. I found myself turning the back left zone down a notch while raising the front right a little when I was looking at a tiny beetle wing. Suddenly the vein pattern popped out. That level of lighting nuance is something you don't get on a cheap tabletop unit with a single, fixed LED. Now, let's talk about the 3D boom stand. It's a flexible, articulated arm that lets you point the microscope head in any direction, which is a massive win if you're juggling multiple workstations or need to move the head over a larger work surface. I set it up on my bench, then angled the head down over a small tray of electronic parts while the rest of my tools stayed on the table. The stand held its position without sagging, even when I nudged the tray a bit. That said, the boom isn't completely rigid. If you apply a sudden jolt, say, bumping the table, there's a tiny wobble before the tension springs settle. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to be aware of if you plan to move the microscope around a lot during a session. One of the biggest draws for a lot of creators is the built-in 10MP USB camera. This isn't a throwaway webcam. You can capture stills at a resolution that holds enough detail for documentation, or stream live video to a laptop for remote troubleshooting. I hooked the camera up to my computer, ran the supplied software, and recorded a quick walkthrough of a circuit board. The video showed the copper traces clearly, and the 90x zoom let me zoom in on a microvia while still keeping the surrounding components in frame. The downside: the software is fairly basic and can be a little clunky to set up on newer versions of Windows, so you might need to spend a few minutes tweaking the driver. Once you get past that, though, the footage is solid. So, who should really consider buying this microscope? If you're a serious hobbyist, a maker who frequently works on tiny electronics, a student needing a reliable visual aid for biology labs, or even a small-scale jeweler examining gemstones, the SM4TZ 144A 10M hits a sweet spot. The combination of a wide zoom range, adjustable ring lighting, and a decent camera makes it versatile enough to handle different types of specimens without buying multiple dedicated microscopes. The price is higher than a basic 30x unit, but the extra magnification and lighting flexibility genuinely add value when you need to see fine details. On the flip side, if your work never goes beyond a casual look at a plant leaf or you're only interested in occasional hobby projects, you might be better off with a simpler 40x model. The extra zoom and camera will sit unused, and you'll be paying for features you don't need. Also, if you need a microscope that you can take on the road like for fieldwork in remote locations, the boom stand size and the need for a power source for the LED ring make it less portable than a compact, battery-operated unit. Let's break down the practical strengths one more time. The super wide field zoom lets you stay in the same field of view while you zoom, which reduces